Amid the harsh repression of slavery, Americans of African descent and particularly black women managed, sometimes at their own peril, to preserve the culture of their ancestry and articulate both their struggles and hopes in their own words and images. A growing number of black female artists and writers emerged throughout the Civil War and Reconstruction eras before finally bursting into the mainstream of American culture in the 1920s with the dawn of the Harlem Renaissance. The Harlem Renaissance was the development of the Harlem neighborhood in New York City as a black cultural mecca and the subsequent social and artistic explosion that resulted. The period is considered a golden age in African American culture, manifesting in literature, music, stage performance, and art. In the years following World War I, black visual artists produced an increasing amount of work influenced by the aesthetic traditions of Africa. One of the earliest artists to do so was Meta Warrick Fuller, who was the first black woman to receive a federal commission for her art. Fuller's works, such as the sculpture Ethiopia Awakening, made in 1914, anticipated the resurgence of African themes in the art of the Harlem Renaissance. Prominent artists of this era also included the sculptor Augusta Savage, who was renowned for her busts of black leaders W.E.B. Du Bois and Marcus Garvey, as well as a piece for the 1939 New York World's Fair titled The Harp, which was inspired by James Weldon Johnson's poem Lift Every Voice and Sing, and the painter Lois Mailou Jones, who was famed for her 1938 painting Le Fétiche, which depicted several different types of African-style masks. Over the first 2 decades of the 20th century, continuing racial injustice and widespread reports of lynchings and other violence inspired a great deal of protest, along with a flowering of African American literature, including the short stories, novels, and commentary of Pauline E. Hopkins, editor of the Colored Americans magazine. Among the most eloquent voices of the Harlem Renaissance was that of Nella Larsen, author of the novels Quicksand and Passing. Quicksand was a powerful portrayal of the suffocating disillusionment and entrapment experienced by racial minorities during this time, while Passing dealt with the calculated deception of white people by black people who decided for social or economic reasons to pass as members of the other race, a topic that deeply fascinated readers of the 1920s. What makes this so significant is that not only was it unusual for an African-American female author to have a novel published, but it was also highly uncommon for novels to contain a black woman as the main heroine. There was also a surge of black women in music with the emergence of the Jazz Age. Classic female blues singers were pioneers in the record industry and were among the first black singers and blues artists recorded. Mamie Smith became known as America's First Lady of the Blues after her song Crazy Blues was the first blues ever recorded by a black woman. After that, blues had become a nationwide craze and even became popular with white audiences. The most popular of the classic blues singers was Bessie Smith. Known as the Empress of the Blues, she eventually became the highest paid black artist of the 1920s and recorded over 160 songs. Mahalia Jackson and Janis Joplin are among those who actually named Bessie Smith as an influence. According to Leroy Jones, recordings of the classic blues singers affected the existing folk tradition and created another tradition that was unlike any other in the past. Other pioneers who helped transform jazz and blues music include Billie Holiday, who started her career singing in nightclubs in Harlem, Florence Mills, a cabaret singer and dancer, Clara Smith, who was billed as the Queen of the Moaners, even though she had a lighter and sweeter voice than many of her contemporaries, and Gladys Bentley, who was not only an extremely gifted blues singer, pianist, and entertainer, but was also a queer icon. She came to be known as the Brown Bomber of sophisticated songs and was often billed as America's greatest sepia piano player. These women were integral parts of the Harlem Renaissance. As organizers, editors, decision-makers, they helped publicize, support, and thus shape the movement. Today, scholars are still working on finding more works of the Harlem Renaissance, rediscovering more of the artists and writers. The works found are a reminder not only of the creativity and vibrancy of those women who participated, but they're also a reminder of the inequality they worked so hard to overcome. There's so much to learn from these amazing women as they continue to pave the way for black culture in America.